All right, let's kick things off, my man.
Okay.
Good to have you at the homestead here.
Thank you.
Beautiful Bali. The sun's going down. It's a nice evening, and it's just you and me. And I wanted to flesh out some of your ideas a little bit more. The thing that you've been going on and on about is volatility.
I thought it was you going on and on about it.
I know I'd like to go on and on about it. I think it's important, but also I wonder if people recognize how important it is. I think it can seem like a boring topic, but the implications are interesting.
Yeah.
And you spent all this time, creating a graph, so you must think it's somewhat interesting.
Yeah, no, I've just, I see a lot of people talk about it on Twitter now, right? Like Vinny and whatnot, putting that graph on, just got masses of retweets.
All right, so let's talk about the graph here, because this looks nice. There's lots of colors here. Bitcoin 60-day volatility. Now, can you just explain, I know there's a lot of data here. It goes all the way back to the beginning of 2011. So the process before we get into like why volatility is important, what did you do? Did you go back and scrub the entire blockchain for, or API data from various?
Well, I've got a database of all the coins going back since they were floated, right? So getting the Bitcoin price is pretty easy. Then
Does it come from various exchanges?
It comes from a lot of sources. Well, more than one source. CoinMarketCap is the primary. They actually scrub it. They do an average of their own, ignoring Chinese exchanges. So the fees-based markets only. And then, but their data doesn't go all the way back. So I spliced in some prior data from, I think, blockchain.
Did you call Mark Karpellis and see if he had it on a thumb drive there?
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder what happened to that data. If all that data belongs to someone, if it's in the receivership or something. Well, couldn't they sell it? That seems like it's got historical significance. There's no Mt. Gox data in here?
Well, you could say between 2013 and 14, that was Mt. Gox data, right? I think they wrote that price chart there.
Yes, it was there. Yeah, it's their fictional bot creating the hysteria during that time. So that's right around
that double.
These
double
two
whammy,
little. This gray line is the Bitcoin price.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is Willy bot 1 and Willy bot 2.
Yeah, and it's interesting because see the pump prior.
This is the first pump.
The 2011 pump. That looks very suspicious now. The more I look at it.
No, man, this isn't pump. This is Silk Road. That's Silk Road right there, man.
When was Silk Road exactly? What month?
I don't know what month, but I mean, it hit Wired magazine in like the fall of 2011.
The fall of 2011.
Because that was the first time I learned about Bitcoin, was the fall of 2011 when
Wired magazine
published.
What month is it? Is it March, April?
So it must have been.
I'm from the southern hemisphere.
This must have been a lot of drug sales. This is in the summer of 2011, and then here's where the article that I read happened, where it's like Bitcoin is dead.
So. Well, I put that on another graph, which I talk about some other time. But that bubble there was bigger than the Willybot number 1, which was bigger than the Willybot number 2. Right?
Because this is a logarithmic graph.
Yeah, this is a logarithmic graph, and when you take it in with other factors, the first pump stands way out, and these little bumps look more organic bubbles, but these ones look manipulated. It looks like 3 manipulated bubbles that were, like 10 times bigger than a normal bubble should be. So I'm really suspicious. I don't know what happened. No one's talked about it, but I've just started to go down this theory that that was the data shows that's unnatural, really unnatural, yeah.
How come we didn't understand that it was unnatural at the time? We just were all exuberant at the price increases and the although.
How many people were running financial analysis on this stuff back then?
No,
it was all geeks and drug addicts.
It was, and Magic the Gathering card traders.
Right. Yeah. No, it's but we can look in hindsight and go, wow, that was some.
So anyway, this is all of the data, right? This is all of the data from the history of Bitcoin, price data from exchanges going back as far as you can. You spliced some of the data together, and presumably you've got this big treasure trove of data that you can make all kinds of graphs going forward on. all kinds of analysis
Yeah,
that,
no,
that you
I
can use to pump, whatever theories you have on Twitter.
No, it's really good now. It took a few months writing the database and it's and indicators and all sorts of metrics I can apply on it. So now when I have a question, I just go, well, if you grab this metric and divide it by that metric, and out comes a number.
Uh-huh.
You can get quite creative with it as well.
Yeah. Well, this graph, this is one of the ones that you have put together with all of this data that you have collected, and I think it's quite interesting to start. You can look at the graph and you can think about historical occurrences, like the Silk Road coming into the consciousness, the original bubble and crash, Willy Bot 1, Willy Bot 2, and you kind of can think back on your state of mind during those times. And I think the really interesting thing about looking at volatility is it seems to me that you can say more and more about the data the further you get to the right of this graph.
Yeah.
Right? This is the early days. This whole left side of the graph is the early days. And as the volatility goes down, volatility is the trend line for volatility is what you see here. Correct?
That's right. That's the regression.
The red line is the actual 60-day volatility, but the regression line going through that is this line right here.
That's
and
right.
you've also got trading volume represented in bubbles along the way.
Right.
So it looks like the bubbles are getting bigger, the volatility is going down, and
I mean, to put that in perspective, our daily kind of boring trade nowadays is bigger than the peak all-time high trading volume back in the heady days of late 2013, right?
yeah, late
Yeah.
2013 is
Right.
nothing in terms of volume compared to
I
what
mean,
we're
no,
doing today.
that one there, the peak all-time high.
Oh,
Look at
this.
you know how the volumes just skyrocket when it's peaking, and we get that every day now, more than that every day.
Yeah,
It shows you how mature the market is now.
right. That's amazing. Bitcoin has several million more coins now than it did back then. So it's a larger pool of Bitcoins. And there are many, many more exchanges that are operational. So
Yeah, it's better spread, and like if you look at those little bubbles, if you look at the little bubbles before the 2013 pump there,
over here,
the area of these circles, the area of the circle is proportional to the amount of US dollars trading on the exchange each day. So look at how small those bubbles were. You kind of got move
move to the right. Over here?
Well, the labels are covering the circle. I want you to see the circle sizes. Look how tiny those circles
Yeah,
are.
these guys down here.
Those three circles, right? Before the big bubble, big financial bubble. But then compare the area of that to nowadays, our day in, day out. It's like a factor of probably fit, 10 of those bubbles in?
Right.
And it shows you how...
So that tells me
much
that it's
bigger.
more real.
it's
Like
real.
we're saying more real things about what's going on here because there are many more market participants, presumably many more people with their own opinions on whether it should go up or go down, or
Yeah, that's right.
and different factors and different geographies that affect things in different ways. But yet it's no one geography can kind of eclipse the others because it's a global market, right?
Yeah, that's totally right. Back in the day, it was, mainly US. I would have said you'd know more back in those days, but like, and it was all on one exchange primarily. But now we've got, what's the count of exchanges, Gary? Do you know? It's like 100 exchanges?
Yeah.
More than
I was
that?
going to say like
More than under 200, over 100.
I wanted to say dozens, but I don't think it's quite that big. But over
Dozens?
100.
Over 100,
Yeah.
yeah. And see, it's and so yeah, this kind of leads. The more traders you have, like in more countries and more geographic zones and more different situations, they all have a different buy-sell criteria, and that's exactly when you look at volatility. That's what causes the volatility to reduce, price stability to go up, right?
Right, because you've got greater and greater liquidity and diversity of market players.
Yeah, and liquidity I mean, I don't know if liquidity's the word for it. I would say the number of traders with active orders on the market. So if one dude rocks up and has a view on the market, and that dude might be huge, and I say, I'm going to slam down $100 million, you know. But imagine if there's, 100 million other traders with a different view, and they'll likely absorb that without the market moving too much. Compared to the early days when, maybe you've got a dozen people around the room,
Yeah.
so that, when one person antes up with one direction, there's not a lot holding the market to move another direction very quickly. So it's really important how many people are trading with different views and orders in the markets, and that's how you drive the volatility down. Like if you look, I'll move. Like if you look at the blue lines there, blue lines are this is foreign exchange. The solid blue line is Euro USD pair, right? And so
Also 60-day volatility?
60-day volatility, yep. So that, this is, US dollar is what, off the top of my head, something like $35 trillion of M2 money supply. The euro, something similar. So two of the biggest markets in the world in foreign exchange against each other. So,
which absolutely dwarfs Bitcoin, we should say, for those who
Yeah.
can't think in large numbers. But 32
So-
trillion versus about 16 billion.
yes, 16 billion. So what? That's you
Definitely,
can work,
definitely a decimal
that
place.
that is 2,000 times bigger, right? It's 2,000 times bigger, right? So
Yeah, well, that's
So-
that's an interesting way to appreciate just how small Bitcoin is still versus the other things that we compare it to. I mean, these days, if you're in the Bitcoin world, you think in terms of Bitcoin, you start to think of it as money or trading it for things. You put it in your brain the same way you put dollars, yen, euro, but yet it is infinitely small or
so-
infinitesimal by comparison.
it's tiny. And then you look at the volatility we're seeing. Like Bitcoin's volatility is around the 10% mark on.
Where are we
Let's say the peak of it. What is that? It's about 15%. The green line, the peak volatility.
This up here?
Yeah, that's if you move over to our current date. Yeah, that's like what is it? 13%, 14%. Yeah, 13.75. All right, now
Yeah, that's a lot. That's high
looking at the USD euro, it looks like it peaked at
3%
5%.
over here.
Back there. That was the 5%, right? So our peak volatility is 13 versus 5%. It's not that's a significant difference, but like when talking about a market 2,000 times smaller, that's very stable. And you got to ask yourself, why is Bitcoin so stable? Why is it so stable? Right?
Do you have a theory on that?
It's on a trend line going down, right? And
Yeah, this is the
it's
volatility
and
train,
it's looking to dip.
heading
Well,
into the station here.
It's like it's dipping. It's looking to dip below US euro in say 3 years, right?
Right. Well,
And we're only 2,000 times smaller. Why is that? Right? There's something wrong here, right?
yeah. Did you do your graph wrong?
No, it's like when you need to look
does
at
that
how
mean like the U.S. euro market is manipulated?
this made me think about what generates volatility, and it comes back to what we're talking about. How many people are trading? Have got orders in the order books on Bitcoin, and how many people got order books on foreign exchange, right? And when you think about it, like outside of the speculators, we've got speculators in both markets, but like essentially foreign exchange, you're doing international trade, right?
Mm-hmm.
So import-export trade hits the foreign exchange markets. Okay, so what percentage of the world economy is between countries, and how much of it is domestic? I don't know the answer to that question, but
Yeah.
I'm saying like the domestic trade within a country
It's
is
huge. Yeah.
huge compared to what actually hits between the borders, right?
Right.
But
But trade should also be huge, but maybe not by comparison to domestic volume. But
yeah, well, like we should be able to pull some figures up. I didn't prepare for this, but like just off the bat, I'd say that a domestic trade is a lot, quite significant, probably much higher, and so if you think about Bitcoin being the world's first global currency that can be transacted across borders, right? Say you go buy your coffee at Kismet with your Bitcoin here in Ubud, right? Well, there's a high chance. I know Micah might be by keeping the Bitcoin, but like a lot of merchants actually have to cash out, right?
Right.
To pay the bills, pay the staff, the inventory, whatnot. So every time you make a local purchase here, that Bitcoin hits an exchange. So every single transaction on the Bitcoin, for most part, hits the international market. So you've got an order of magnitude more orders in the order book, right?
Yeah.
So that creates the potential for much more price stability. I understand now we don't have a lot of merchants using, we probably see more in remittances, but in a future scenario, say 3 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, when people start to use it consistently on the internet and at your local coffee shop to buy stuff, the amount of trades going through these exchanges, they should dwarf foreign exchange. It's not the sheer dollar value going through; it's actually the number of trades.
Yeah, well, I mean, that could be driving the dynamic now, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when, we've got some other confluence of circumstances that may make it difficult for small transactions to hit the blockchain and to make it into an exchange, like show up in an exchange API. Some of that stuff may start to happen off chain, and I wonder if that will affect the overall volume. But
that's that's a fair point. I mean, that's another topic too. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, well, this is like when you grasp that because it's a global currency, every time you trade on it, it is acting to reduce the volatility. Unlike your like US dollar purchase in a US country, there's no foreign exchange going on there. So what that tells me is that Bitcoin has a very probable, not possible, but probable chance of being the most stable currency the world's seen here. And
that's the really exciting thing that this graph represents. It seems like a boring topic, Bitcoin volatility, but when you think about the implications, when this trend line, which is heading south, when it is regularly below this blue line, which is the USD Euro Forex cross, then it will make more sense to hold on to Bitcoin than it does to hold on to dollars or euros.
That's right. It's like it's just like another currency. It doesn't move too much. It'll be boring. It'll be to the mums and pops. It'll be going, look, that's not going up or down much, other than it's not going down much. It's not wobbling much, but actually what you'll see is maybe 100% return per annum in capital gain on that currency performing against the US dollar. So then it starts to look like I can have my money in a US dollar savings account earning 0.25%, or I can have it in a digital currency called Bitcoin earning 100%. And who wouldn't move to the higher bearing interest account? And once you've got it in that, why wouldn't you spend it directly rather than go through the hassle of converting it to US dollars to spend, right?
Right. So are we going to see some sort of adoption curve or collective light bulb going off where they're holding on to Bitcoin and looking for places to spend it directly rather than converting it?
Yeah, and I think like if you look at what happened in 2014, 2015, the merchants started to adopt Bitcoin, but there were no one holding it to spend. They were hoarding it
Yep.
right? But like when you get the volatility low enough where people forget about holding US dollars in their savings account because they're just going to ride on the 100% gain, they're going to go direct and spend it. And when you start to get people spending it and merchants who always want to take it, but they've stopped taking it because no one wants to spend it. The merchants are willing, the spenders aren't, right? When that happens, you start to see a global economy start to work on this coin. And I thought it was, when I first saw this volatility graph, and I was like, wow, I was kind of blown away because it says in a few years, not too far away, it's actually got a shot of becoming a world reserve currency, in my mind.
Well, the world is shopping for a new world reserve currency. The U.S. dollar and the U.S. government, they have competing objectives. They've got a domestic objective and they've also got international objectives, and those things often don't match, and so they've got to make a choice. It really doesn't make sense for a single country to be the shepherd of the world's reserve currency, although it does. It looks pretty nice if you're sitting in America, but it's the powers that be that aren't American are saying, hey, we're getting kind of screwed here. And we need something better.
It's war out there, right?
It's
this is
currency wars.
This is currency wars. Yeah, this is the new sophisticated war of the 21st century. And,
yep, that's right.
And this is an exit. This is an exit.
Well, and you were talking about Bitcoin kind of playing a new role at some point when the volatility is low enough, and it's economist dogma that deflationary currencies are terrible. Right? We've been trained that inflation is good. In fact, the Federal Reserve in the United States, their policy is a 2% inflation goal. And they contend that if you've got currency that gets more valuable over time, that people will always hoard it, never spend it, and the economy will grind to a halt.
Yeah, I mean, that's... I asked that question the first time I went to a Bitcoin meetup not knowing anything. About Bitcoin. And
Well, the other thing is, besides being deflationary or gaining value over time, it's quite possible that people will hold their own keys, and so there won't be fractional reserve lending going on because they will have the keys, and they won't be giving their money to a third party to lend out at interest because they won't need to go seek out interest. The value of the currency will just grow.
Yeah, because it's deflationary, right?
And so that the Bitcoin that I'm hanging on to cannot be used to drive progress for somebody else. And is that a bad thing? Maybe
I think that there will be a loan market, but it's not fractional reserve. I don't think it. Well, I don't know how it's going to pan out. I'm not from Wall Street, but
yeah. Well, and there's going to be, if Bitcoin succeeds, and if these two lines cross, if this trend line goes below this blue line, then we are going to be in an environment, in a socio-economic environment that the world hasn't seen before.
Never, yeah.
I'm excited to see what that looks like. I think it will bring prosperity. There are episodes throughout history where civilizations had sound money, and they correspond to periods of growth. And
this starts to look like the gold standard days again. We had a lot of prosperity.
And a lot of economists like Paul Krugman disparaged the gold standard, but there's a lot of different definitions of what exactly you mean when you say gold standard. But I for one, I'm not that happy with the status quo. I'm quite happy. I'm interested to see what happens when there is it seems to me to be a more fair arrangement. You earn $1, you keep $1, and your savings aren't inflated away. You don't have to be a rich person in order to hang on to your wealth. You can be a poor person and squirrel your pennies away. And
yeah, I mean, ultimately it stops the problem with the era we've been in, where we've had this fiat money, is that governments can print more of it and essentially dilute your value out of the economy.
Right. Well, and
hidden tax on the people.
Well, and the United States has been taxing the whole world. because
Yes.
they've got the reserve currency. They've been
Reserve
printing.
currency.
They quadrupled the money supply,
Yep.
and there's no inflation.
And
which-
exported that to the world. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
via- yeah.
Well, and the world is consequently seeking alternatives.
Yep.
And
So gold's been pretty big for people like China, right? Countries like China.
yeah. Gold, China has been collecting gold. India as well.
So do you think that China's going to buy Bitcoin?
That's a good question. If they see Bitcoin playing a role in global financial markets, I'm sure they'd be savvy enough to get involved. And they've already got a very solid mining industry domestically,
No, I think they like that
and
too.
and domestic expertise in that area.
That's
You know,
right.
I keep thinking, what if there's some sort of economic catastrophe, and you're going to have the IMF riding in on a white horse and saying, we've got special
Mm.
drawing rights,
Mm.
and we got China, we got China in there just in time, right, to put their currency in the basket. And now that we're re-racking everything, let's take a look at what assets everybody really has, so that we can denominate these special drawing rights loans in an appropriate way. Oh, China, you've got all this gold. Oh, China, you've got all this Bitcoin. Okay, well, here's the exchange rate between the new SDR and the Chinese yuan. Okay, America, what have you got under your belt? Oh, like a bunch of rusty factories and a depleted kind of industrial base, 25% of the gold that you used to have, and $20 trillion in debt to to clear, which we're going to try and take care of during this little reset. You know, it's China's got a lot of debt too, so I don't know what's going to actually happen, but you can see the logic that the economic powers in China might be thinking.
Yeah, I mean,
And you can also see what seems to me to be hubris on the side of the United States, where they think that these circumstances will just go on forever. But I don't think that'll happen.
no, it's day it's going to come. It's going to, yeah.
Right. So all that just based on your cool little 60-day
Yeah,
volatility graph.
there's a lot behind the story, right?
There is.
Yeah,
There is.
Yeah.
Well, okay. That let's leave it there. This is your Bitcoin 60-day volatility graph. It uses data that goes all the way back to the beginning of Bitcoin, at least as best you can. It updates every 30 minutes. You said, with new data from.
Well,
new
these are
exchanges?
daily charts, so the charts won't really move, but behind the scenes it is polling all the sources and recalculating every 30 minutes or so. So yeah.
Okay.
But come back daily because you get a new price candle per day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. And you've definitely got some other graphs, but we're not going to talk about them today. But
No.
and there's new developments that are coming down the pike that maybe you can also leverage some of this data to show us something interesting.
Yeah.
So
totally.
where do people go in order to find this?
This is charts.woobull.com. I haven't linked it to the main site yet because I'm waiting to put up a few more charts before I create this as a proper.
Right, but
Linked
your blog is at woobull.com.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's and you're tweeting at Danger Mouse 117. So follow Will. You usually tweet your charts.
Yeah, usually
That's a good
Twitter
spot.
gets it first, eh?
Yeah.
I usually tweet there before I
So
I
follow
publish
Will
stuff.
on Twitter, and we'll try and make something else interesting, and then we'll talk again.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Thanks,
All
Gary.
right. Catch you later.